Okay, everyone, we're now recording. Good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Overview Committee. My name's Councillor Paul Prentice. I'm chair of this committee. The Overview Committee undertakes pre-decision scrutiny of reports going to the Cabinet on the Council's policies, projects, budget and services. And I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being filmed and made available to view in live and archive form via the Council's website. And if you're seated in the public gallery, it is possible that the cameras may capture your image and you are deemed to be consenting to being filmed, and your image and sound recordings are webcast. I don't believe we've got any Cabinet members at this meeting. There's no fire alarm planned for this evening. If the alarm should sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit. And two of the closest exits are through the glass door behind you to my left and through the double doors onto the riverside behind you. Please muster at Café des Amis. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of the meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. And this meeting is being minuted, recorded, and will be uploaded to the Council's website. The Westgate Garden gates and the riverside are locked, so members of the public must leave the Guildhall via the side exit behind the glass door. And Pippa, do we have any apologies, please?
We have apologies from Councillors Carnack, Flanagan, Liz Harvey and Turnbull.
Thank you. And can we have any substitutes for this evening?
Councillor Thomas is present as a substitute for Councillor Harvey.
Thank you very much. And do we have any declarations of interest by any members or officers this evening? None? Okay. And then no public, I don't think we have any in advance either, do we? There's no public, oh, sorry, Councillor Thomas.
Apologies, Chair, for all that. It was just to mention the fact that the gates aren't closed they're not being closed at dusk or wherever it's meant to be closed at. It's just I don't know if it's a security issue for us or whatever, because then, I know the door's locked now, but we don't know who walks in, do we? But that's just a point of observation, I suppose.
Do we have an answer on that? The gates being closed. I think officers will take that one away because I've noticed that one. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, Bill's going to take that one away for us. Yeah, good point. Thank you. We'll just firstly go over the minutes of the last meeting, which was held way back in October, 10th of October 2024. And I'll just check that everyone is happy. Can I do general assent for that, Pippa? General assent for the minutes of 10th of October meeting? Yep, agreed. Thank you. I'll signature those later. And do I have general assent for the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of June? General assent?
They've been agreed, they just need signing.
They just need signing, I'm told. That's fine. The first item on the agenda then, number 6, is parish capital grants, allocation of funds, and that's pages 11 to 20 of your packs. And so we'll start off with considering the report by Bill Hicks, Service Director Place, and Michelle Mabrak, Head of Culture, Leisure and External Development. And I'll just like to invite Bill to make his introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm going to immediately pass over to the officer, Alison Small, who is our Senior Voluntary Sector Development Manager.
Thank you. So this report is to recommend our parish council capital grants for the year 25-26. Annually, we invite parish councils to apply for small capital funding within their parish areas. This year we had 7 applications, and this will be for the year 25-26, so starting in April. In those applications, the funding overall is over £39,000, seeking 21,000 just over for capital grants from the council. So part of the process is the parishes put their own contribution as well. The available budget we have for 25-26 is our usual. There's an annual £20,000 budget, and we had an underspend from last year of £820. There was a very small amount underspend from the budget last year, but also one parish didn't go ahead with their project last year, so we've put that to this year's as well. Parishes are invited to put in an application which they self-score as well. And part of that is ensuring that they have carried out community involvement and consultation, looking at project outcomes, how it tackles rural isolation, and value for money, but also how it impacts around our corporate pledges in our new corporate plan around greener, fairer, stronger and better. We did have one ineligible application in this round, which we haven't added to the spreadsheet, and that was due to it coming in late and it wasn't fully completed, and we've gone back to that parish separately. So out of the 7 parish councils that have applied, you will see they range from road safety projects to small capital gate replacements and some play area and local provision to improve some of their facilities. So as officers, we have scored all the applications and gone through. There will be some that we will check around that they've got all the relevant permissions in place, but we are recommending to fully fund all the projects. It does come over £185 of the allocated funding, but we would use that, we would fill that with our existing budgets. So that's what we would be recommending.
Thank you, Ali. And I will propose then we recommend to the Cabinet option 1, that we fully fund all projects and use £185 from existing budgets to cover the shortfall. Do I need to get a seconder for that? Yeah, do I have a seconder? Councillor Mackenzie, I saw you first.
I'll second that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we'll open the debate. Are there any contributions people would like to make on this item? Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe a suggestion, because it's such a nominal amount that maybe a process needs to be implemented where it's less than 1% of the budget. And if the Cabinet Member for Finance agrees, then you go to the group leaders to see if that can be agreed collectively instead of needing it to come to this committee. It's less than 1%, but maybe a more efficient process is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure what the protocol is, and I appreciate your point about it being a relatively small amount. I think there's probably a reason why we do bring it to committee that either Ali or Bill will be able to answer. Ali, do you want to?
I think in the past, and when I say in the past, I mean a bit before COVID, we were always oversubscribed. So I think that was why it came to committee. But I think it could be an option to Cabinet to say that if it's under budget or 1% over budget, it could go to a Cabinet or our Cabinet Member as a decision. So happy to put that in the report going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
I was just going to say whether it's actually, I know it's £182, but I just wonder if it's actually protocol part of the whole Waiter City with with the cabinet system. I'm assuming it has to come to us first before it goes to cabinet. It's just protocol, I suppose.
Didn't catch the first part of what you said.
It comes to this committee, then goes to cabinet. I'm assuming it's just a protocol process that has to go through. It could be a £10,000, it could be £1,000 or £10, I suppose. I think it has to go through. But I understand what you're saying. It seems daft to come to here, but I'm assuming that's why it is here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I mean, that's something I think we can record for the minutes as something for the cabinet to consider. Bill.
I don't know if that's what, was you proposing that if it was 1% up that didn't go to cabinet, it just goes to a cabinet member for sign off? So I think that would be if it went to cabinet, it would need to come here, I think. But if it was a cabinet member sign off, then potentially it wouldn't have to go through the process. But we could put that as an option.
Okay. Are there any other contributions on that item? That's fine. So we will need to take a recorded vote on that. Which will be we'll be proposing to cabinet option 1, and that's to fully fund all projects and use £185 from existing budgets to cover the shortfall. Okay, so the vote's live now.
And that's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Pippa. So we move swiftly on to item 7, and that's the business case for acquisition of temporary accommodation on pages 21 to 34. Thank you, Ali. Pages 21 to 34 of your packs. And that's to consider the report of Marie Royal, Director of People, and Tracy Chambers, Head of Housing and Community. And I think Tracy's going to present the report to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So you should have already received the report. I'm hoping you've had an opportunity to read that along with the confidential appendix that comes with that. So what we're looking at is our temporary accommodation purchasing. So we're looking at purchasing some units of accommodation for the purposes of for our homeless households to be able to utilise those. So we've had an increase in temporary accommodation and the associated costs that goes with that, causing additional budget pressures. So what we're trying to look at is opportunities to change the way that we're working and do things a little bit differently. So what this would be is purchasing properties on the open market for the use of temporary accommodation and then recovering some costs back through housing benefit for those, rather than using what we have at the moment, which is some of our private units of accommodation. So at the moment, we have some properties that we used back in 2019-20. We did have a pilot of 10 properties that we purchased for the use of temporary accommodation. So we know this is a model that does already work. And we've got in place our social lettings agency who manage those properties for us. So we have got a model that we know that we can utilise with this. So what we would be suggesting is the purchase of approximately 20 units. It will depend on the associated cost of that, making sure we've got best value for money, and also looking at what opportunities there are on the market. So that may vary slightly. And we've put in an approximate units of 5 1-beds, 10 2-beds and 5 3-beds on the basis of the analysis that we've carried out. So the recommendation today is a recommendation for Cabinet, and that's to add funds to the capital programme for the purchasing of these units of temporary accommodation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tracy. So I'll be firstly recommending to Cabinet, proposing that we recommend to Cabinet that funds are added to the capital programme funded through borrowing to purchase approximately 20 units of temporary accommodation It's important to state at this point, if there's anything you want to discuss in the confidential appendix, we will then go into private session, excluding members of the public, and well, obviously without the recording going afterwards. So if there's anything that people want to discuss in public, now would be the opportunity to do that. Councillor Old.
Thank you, Chair. This is presented as a business case and we're asked to judge it mainly on the economic case. But in fact, the economic case, while still sound, is only a part of this. The major contribution is that this means that people in temporary accommodation who are suffering from homelessness are going to be housed and within the district. And that's incredibly important because moving people out of the district just compounds the effect of homelessness, separates people from their social networks and their sources of support. So I commend the officers on a very bold decision, not just on the economic case, but also on the social case, which is paramount. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Old. I should just add, before I take you, Councillor Smith, that I just need to propose that item, don't I, and get a seconder. Yeah, so I'm proposing that item. Do I have a seconder for this item? Councillor Dan Smith, thank you. And did you want to speak on this item as well, Councillor Smith? Yeah.
Just as a point, obviously it's part of the problem with homeless accommodation is the same as any other type of accommodation, that sometimes different properties are more suited than others. So obviously this is going to depend on availability and cost. But is there a penciled in, if you like, goal for the types of accommodation that would most suit the needs of the people within the district who would fit that type of accommodation, and that those would have priority in terms of the purchase order, if you like. So, thank you.
Yeah, I should probably get Tracy to respond to those first few points, and I'll bring in other councillors.
Yeah, thank you. So what we'd probably be looking at is obviously self-contained units is what we'd be looking at in the main. There'd probably be houses, unless we can purchase a block of flats that works for us. But it would all be on our kind of cost analysis on what best suits within that. And then we would look at kind of the areas that make best use of where we currently have stock. So we'd be looking at areas that are within our boundary for some of our council homes or some of the properties we have already to be able to maintain those stocks appropriately. And then what we'd be looking to do is match the people that come through to the right properties within that. And hopefully that covers your question.
Go for it.
If the properties are also, I mean, I should have said at the first as well, that could be considered by smaller area as well, because I mean, for people in the situation from Herne Bay, it would be suitable to have somewhere in Herne Bay, and likewise for Whitstable, Canterbury, and the rurals. So again, this is a kind of penciled in thing.
Councillor Smith, can you go slightly closer to your mic? Is that okay?
Yes, sure. Sorry, I'm trying to avoid the flies. They keep coming at me. But yes, I mean, if the accommodation can also be sorted, if possible, at all possible, cost-wise, by area, geographic area, to actually accommodate the needs of the towns and the villages, respectively, to their particular wants.
Good to come back on that. Thank you.
Yes, sure. So we're talking about quite a small number of units, really, compared to the number of people we've got in temporary accommodation. But what we will always try to do, especially with families, is we will try and put them in the places that they're currently in. So if someone's in Herne Bay, we will always endeavour to put them in the place that they are at this time. Unfortunately, with the way the temporary accommodation is, that's not always possible, and it depends who comes through on the day, what the availability of the properties are, and it also depends on what the availability is within the market. So if we get an opportunity to purchase in a particular area, a large amount of units, it might be that we do that. So it's really going to depend on what opportunities become available and also the people that come through at the time and the availability of properties. But certainly we will try and match people within the towns that they're currently in. Thank you.
Councillor Naomi Smith first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, officers. This is excellent. I, can agree with Peter, Councillor Old as well, that We've all had people turn up to our surgeries and contact us who are desperate and are homeless, but are being sent to so far out of area, away from schools where their children attend, etc. So this is really, really welcome and really important. I have questions about how the temporary accommodation works, because I'm not sure. How long are people in temporary accommodation for? When we're buying this temporary accommodation, are we putting it all together? Because that then, I have concerns that people don't take ownership because they're only going to be there for a short time. I know people who in London who were in temporary accommodation for 20 years, and they ended up getting the right to own it for nothing at one point because they'd started, and these were a lot of it. It was back in the day, but people ended up with quite nice flats. So is that, how long are they in temporary accommodation for? And are we sort of creating ghettos of temporary accommodation? And that was my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So temporary accommodation will vary, how long people are in there for. It depends on the type of, the family. Is it 1 bed? Are they 2 bed need, 3 bed need? What areas are they looking at? Are they able to access into the private sector? Because some will go through social housing, some will go through private sector. So some of them can be reasonably quick, some of them can be a bit longer. It could be up to, say, 2.5 years potentially that somebody is in temporary accommodation. But it really does vary. We'll obviously aim to try and move people out as soon as we possibly can within the limitations that we have. In terms of it all being in one area, as I say, it will depend on the opportunities that become available. So I don't want to say we will pepper pot, which we will do if we've got an opportunity to, but if we get an opportunity for a unit where we can purchase all of these together and financially that stacks up, then potentially we may purchase 1 unit. But what I will say is we will be monitoring these properties. They will be managed. So we will have our team going into those properties, making sure that people are maintaining them properly and that we don't get any antisocial behaviour. And if we do, we have things in our power to evict people if we need to. Not that we obviously want to do that, or work with them, with our sustainment teams to be able to make sure that they can maintain that better. But we're not looking at creating ghettos. These people that come in are varied people. The average homeless person, isn't what it was previously because there is so much going on in the market. And, what we do is create a sustainable community within that. So making sure that we get a mix of 1, 2, 3 bedrooms so that then, there's families as well as single people potentially to make sure that we haven't got a big amount of single people perhaps in one place that might cause some potential issues, but we will work on that. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Buckman was next.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for that. I was just trying to, on one of the risk things you spoke about maintenance. Is that maintenance of the units? It depends. My next bit depends on that. Or actually, I'll say it all together, and then you just say no. Or would that include sort of grounds maintenance? Because I have concerns with all the maintenance. You buy the freehold or you buy the unit, and then you have added maintenance costs, and depending on who's doing it, these are escalating quite rapidly recently. Like doubling, tripling, quadrupling. So I'm just wondering how you would. And that's out of your hands, but if you take that sort of thing into account, and then secondly, where you've got about the disability as a protected characteristic, you've got the if we make a decision to purchase an adapted unit, so how far down the line would that sort of decision be made, and what would that depend on? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So just on your first question around repairs. So we would be looking at freehold properties unless, just as long as we own that freehold, we wouldn't be looking at purchasing leasehold properties as a preference anyway, just because it's easier if we own the land as well as the property. So what the plan is when we purchase the properties, we'll make sure that we bring them up to a level of standard that means that hopefully there's not going to be much that would be needed in the term in long-term works in terms of like roofs and kitchens and bathrooms. So that's the idea, but there will be maintenance and repair work that needs to be carried out on the property. And I think the suggestion in the report is if it comes to a point where we can't sustain that, then there is the option to sell the property, but that's where the repairs come in. In terms of adapted, absolutely, we are in short supply of adapted units, and if we can purchase adapted units, then we can look to do that. The other option we've got is we have got disabled facilities grants that we might be able to access for disabled households to adapt some of these, or we might be able to use some of our funds to adapt the homes so that it is suitable for disabled households. And that means that we've got a unit then that previously wasn't, but we've adapted to be able to meet that need to hopefully meet some of that demand for our disabled households as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Marie, did you want to come in there? Marie, would you like to come in?
Sorry. On the subject of service charges, if we're doing buybacks, if it's properties that we formerly owned that have been bought through the right to buy and then we acquire them back, then any service charges that apply to those properties, the general fund will pay for those service charges, and we'll look at rent formulation to see if we can include service charges in that too. What I would say is that with the temporary accommodation pilot that we did buy a couple of ground floor properties and made sure that they were level access, that there was flush floor showers. So there were more generic adaptations that were done and that are being maintained in those properties that we already own. So I think it's making sure that we've got a variety of accommodation available so that, you know, people with additional needs, we can keep them in the district, keep them with their support networks, make sure they can access the services that they need to.
Councillor Dan Smith first. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that. On the subject of buybacks, do we have an idea if the freehold on formal right to buy properties is still with the council? Because I think originally they owned the land, but I'm not sure, given the transitions that have happened down the decades, whether that was still the case.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's as bad as getting my card into the ATM, really. In terms of the tenure of buybacks, the council still owns the freehold. So that even if it's a flat and it's been sold leasehold, then we own the freehold of the block. And really that's the advantage of buying back flats in blocks that we already own. You avoid all the additional complexities of having a head landlord above you with different responsibilities. So it's a cleaner deal for the people that live there.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'd like to add my voice to what Councillor Old and Councillor Smith said. I really commend this report. We have all spoken with people who have been dealing with the issue where they've been putting temporary accommodation on the like quite far away, often on the other side of the county. I've heard of. Sorry, is that making a noise? It's your phone, I think. So I've heard of a family in another council district who were living in. Hold on.
So Mackenzie, you might want to move just so it doesn't interfere. Thanks.
Is that better? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So I've heard of a family in another council district who were living in such a state of disrepair that the council there had to offer them temporary accommodation, but it was very far away, and they had to opt to stay in their in the conditions they were in because they couldn't move their kids out of their school because of the SEND provisions that were in place. I don't know if there are any cases of that in this council district. And so I'd like to ask, like, do we know of anyone who has opted for that, who is currently doing that in our district, and like, will they be helped by this scheme? Thank you.
Tracy, yeah.
Hi, and sorry, I don't have those details with me at the moment. What I will say is that when we have got a family, especially with needs, as you mentioned, we will always try and place those within our borough. So if we had to place out of borough, it is in those kind of extreme circumstances where we haven't got anything within the borough, and then we will look to move those households back into the borough as soon as we physically can. There is a lot of pressure. We have got, you know, demands on our temporary accommodation, which is why we are trying to bring this through. We're trying to bring the properties back in borough. And, you know, there's an opportunity with this as well to expand. So if we get these units and actually we still need more, we can purchase some more, and that will give us some better planning, I suppose, for these households. If we know somebody's coming in and they've got those needs, we can say, well, we know we've got a property coming up in a couple of weeks, and we can plan better, because at the moment it's just what is there on the day. So someone comes in and we're calling our landlords and we're trying to find something to put them into. So yes, there are people that will be placed out of borough, but we will always try and move those families back, or those that need to be here for work commitments or other needs. We will always prioritise those as coming back in borough. Thank you.
Councillor Mellish.
Thank you, Chair. I think this might come under confidential, because it's just slightly different from what we've been talking about at the moment. I wanted to talk about how...
It's related to the costs. Would it be easier
how,
just
how
to...
it might be funded.
We will... that's to be on the safe side.
Okay, just make sure I've got a question on that.
Absolutely fine. If we just reserve that matter for the closed session, that'd probably be easier. Councillor... Yeah, Councillor Stockley. Was yours in the same... Councillor Thomas then? Thank you.
I just got a couple of clarifications, if I may. Are we looking at buying these properties kind of outright? That's fine. Have we got anywhere we're thinking of buying now, or is this, once this goes forward, then we've got to start looking? Okay. So if that's the case, I am slightly... Concern's the wrong word. I don't really know how to phrase this, but what we've got to be careful of, if we don't get a lot of antisocial behaviour, as some of the councillors have mentioned, where we block everybody. So we've had some properties in Irwin Bay that actually become very antisocial behaviour because of they're all full of homelessness people, or people in need. I'm trying to phrase it correctly, politically correctly. I'm supportive, but that's what we do have to be careful, because then is that making any sense to the officers? Yeah. And then the other one is, we've had one come through quite recently where people are we still on the same situation, basically, where people have to be evicted before they become actually homeless? Because obviously I can use an example that's coming through at the moment. Basically, someone's going to be evicted, and the advice is you have to be evicted and actually become homeless and chucked out the property before the council could step in and give you and help you out with your property. Is that still the case?
I see, yeah.
Thank you. So just go through those. Hopefully I've got all the questions down there for yourself. If I missed anything, please let me know. In terms of purchasing, so we will be purchasing through borrowing. So it will be purchased outright as such, but obviously we'll have the loan to pay on that. At the moment, we haven't got units that we will be purchasing. What we'll be looking at is a team, and then we'll look at what the opportunities are. We'll look at everything that's available to us. You know, have we got any land that we own that we could build some units on? Have we got properties that we can just go out and purchase on the open market? Are there other opportunities available to us? Can we purchase a whole block of accommodation, for example? But we will be making sure that we buy the right type of accommodation. So what our preference would be that we wouldn't be purchasing a block of all one-bedroom properties. So as I mentioned earlier, we'd be looking at a mix. So 1 beds, 2 beds, 3 beds, and try and create that sustainable community. And as I say, we will be making sure that we've got staff that will be intervening, that will be supporting the people that are there. So there should be adequate support in place to allow that and make sure that we're not having antisocial behaviour and those issues there. So we will keep a very close eye on it if we purchase one unit of accommodation, but we could just purchase properties in different places. In terms of having to be evicted before you come through as homeless, there's a lot of work since the Homeless Reduction Act in 2017. So as part of that, we do have to supply people with what's called a personalised housing plan. So what the team will do is they will look at what are the opportunities for these people, what else can we help them with. They'll look at private rented accommodation. Can they sustain the accommodation they're in? So is there something we can do to prevent them from becoming homeless? So there's a lot of background work that happens before the actual date that someone does get evicted from the property. The issue that we do have is obviously the lack of accommodation. So we can't unfortunately be offering, as soon as somebody's issued a notice, but we will look at trying to move them into something as soon as we have something become available. And the good thing about this is that we can plan, as I say, if we've got, for example, a disabled household that we know is coming through and we've got a disabled unit, it gives us the opportunity to say, okay, we know that property is coming up in X amount of weeks, that person's going to be homeless soon, and we may put them in before the notice expires. And that's the position we'd like to be in, but we need to be able to have that forward planning and those properties available to us to be able to do that, which is the opportunity that this brings for us. Thank you. Was that everything? Sorry, just to check.
Yeah, if I may, Chair, to follow into that, I suppose I hate commenting on this. It's not a comment against council, but we have to be careful that these temporary accommodations don't become permanent accommodations. But then if there's nowhere to put the temporary accommodation because we don't have enough housing stock and we don't have enough places to put people, it's a rabbit and hare sort of scenario type of thing. It's very frustrating. I know you officers are very frustrated, and it's frustrating the councillors as well. It all boils down to there's not enough money in the pot to do everything we want to do. Thank you, Chair.
I was just going to add something which was sort of spurred by Councillor Thomas's point, actually, and it might not be directly relevant to this paper, but whether there is housing stock that we currently have that could become temporary accommodation, and is that a possibility? And is there anything that maybe officers could say on that? Because I'm not sure if that's something that could be considered.
Sure. So our intention obviously is not to use these in the long term. It is for short term, but it's about making those available. So it's about our other initiatives with that. So it's not just about this, but it's also about, how can we increase our council stock? How can we make more opportunities available in the private sector? So we've got a plan that we're working through to try and look at other things that we can do to assist these households. And this is just one of those options that we're looking at. We do have some temporary accommodation that we use within our own council stock, and there is opportunity as well to use council stock, but obviously it's limited in what we have. So what we need to do is look at other options alongside that, because those units we can also use for assisting households as well into permanent accommodation. So it's about getting that balance right. But yes, there is an opportunity to use our own stock for temporary accommodation as well. Thank you.
Is it? Yeah.
Sorry, Chair, before we go into closed chambers, I suppose that I've just popped in my head, rather than using temporary accommodation, we should be using emergency accommodation, I suppose. But that's me being pedantic, I suppose. But thank you.
I suspect legally it is referred to as temporary rather than emergency. Is emergency a different category altogether, or is that not a category at all? No. Want to have these things, absolutely clear. I think at this stage, then, I think we probably I don't see any other contributions in the open session. So what we'll do is we'll go into closed session.
Sorry, Chair. We just...
So what we'll do is, for the benefit of everyone else, The date of the next meeting will be 7 p.m. on Thursday, the 23rd of January, 2025. And is there any urgent business to be dealt with in public? I can't see any. And so we now exclude the press and public. There's no press. Graham, thank you for your attendance. But we'll go into closed session now. And I do need to read a statement, and I need you all to agree to resolve that under section 100 brackets A brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following items of business on the grounds that there would be disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act of the Freedom of Information Act, or both. So can we do a recorded vote
Just
on that?
general
A general assent on that. Do I have general assent for that? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now need to pause. I need a few.
And we're just going to pause so Pippa can stop the recording. Thank you.